It's time for On Point with Julian Phillips.
Well, it's been almost a week now after the election. Actually, it has been a week after the election. And we still are not sure, or at least most of us are sure that Joe Biden is the president-elect and Kamala Harris is the vice president-elect. Now, what a lot of people don't know, normally after elections, there's still counting, so on and so forth. And sometimes there has been delay. We have seen this in 2000, Bush Gore, where there was contention over the hanging chads, the infamous hanging chads in Florida. But now we still have, after overwhelming and convincing evidence, that Donald Trump is not conceding this election. And he's followed by his Secretary of State. He's followed by a number of prominent Republicans who refuse to congratulate Joe Biden, despite the fact that heads of state from other countries, Germany, France, we're talking about even Turkey. President Erdogan, one of his allies, has congratulated Joe Biden, as well as, of course, Boris Johnson from the United Kingdom. But we've got this stalemate here with these baseless lawsuits. What do we do about this? How long is this going to drag out? And will this really hurt democracy in this country as we know it? Bringing in once again, of course, our good friend Eric Ham, a best-selling author, political analyst, to kind of break this down. In the face of everything, I've never seen anything quite like this, at least in modern history. You can go back maybe to the 1800s or something like that, where you might have seen some contentious debate or, folks holding on to power. But what have we here, Eric?
Well, I think you have a situation where now the issue of the transition or the transfer of power is not in doubt, but it's certainly complex and complicated because we have a president who has lost both the popular vote and the electoral college vote and is unwilling to concede at this point. We do know that he is exhausting legal options, but right now there simply is no pathway for President Donald Trump to be reelected. And so the question is, what is the president doing? Why is the president refusing to concede? And what does this mean for not only this transition, but also in terms of the inner workings of government and how we actually continue to maintain the levers of control, the levers of power, particularly in our national security realm?
Okay, let's quickly break this down now. Really, the road to the White House that you had mentioned some time ago, and I got to give you credit for this, is through Pennsylvania. Even if some of these legal challenges hold true, most experts say it still would not be enough to change the vote. He's up by almost over 50,000 votes, and we're still counting. And the rest of the votes that they're counting are basically in blue areas there. So he really has no way. Even if he won every other state in contention, we're talking about Georgia, which he probably won't win at this point, we can count. Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina. Even if he won all those, he still does not win. Most of these lawsuits have already been thrown out. His attack dog, Rudy Giuliani, had a press conference, outside the suburb of Philadelphia, next to this landscaping place and a sex shop. We've also found that one of the folks that they used, Lindsey Graham, was one of his major people, who was some worker who basically said there was some impropriety. He came out and recanted all of that. All of that is done. It's done. So again, we've got that now. But there are people out there, some supporters, and 70 million people that voted for him. I'm sure a sizable percentage of those folks, who are just hypnotized by this man, they still believe this stuff.
You're right. You're right. They do. And not only that, but we see the president is continuing to raise money off of his supporters and using it not only he's saying he's using it to advance his legal challenges, but we do know the president does, like any other presidential campaign, has a mountain of campaign debt. We saw this with Hillary Clinton, both in 2008 and in 2016. In fact, in 2008, the question after she lost was, would Barack Obama help her retire her campaign debt? Would he help her with that? And we know the president has it. But not only does the president have it, he's got a lot of it, because even in the final months of the campaign, the the Trump campaign was struggling with resources. They simply did not have it, and now the president's got to figure out a way. So the president never look at what the president is doing in terms of what he's doing to preserve the presidency. Look at what the president is doing to preserve his bottom line.
Right. So here's the deal. He has all this money that he owes back. As you said, he ran out of money back in September. He was pulling ads from various states. So he has no money. Of course, Biden had a huge cash flow of money. So he's got to pay this money back. So you mentioned a few other things behind this. And this is a theory that we talked about, but this is something that may be true, as you have said, Eric, that with all this money that he owes, on top of that, about $1 billion he has to pay back in 2 years. Half of that, almost $500 million of his personal money. He's got the Attorney General of the state of New York with a civil lawsuit against him for the Trump Organization. He's got the Manhattan District Attorney dealing with his taxes and criminal investigations. He's got sexual lawsuits, and God knows what else. So he's like a caged animal, a wild one at that, desperately knowing that once he leaves 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, he's red meat, he's fresh game, and he's scared.
Yeah, all of those protections that he is afforded as president of the United States, they immediately go away. And this is a president who was staring at a very dark, a very bleak, a very isolated post-presidency. If you look at most post-presidencies in history, I mean, they've always been lauded because you move from that position of president, a politician, to elder statesman. This is a president who's not going to necessarily move in that direction, even though he does have this large following, because it's about preservation of his own lifestyle. It's about, staying out of prison, staying, one step ahead of bankruptcy, financial ruin. That's what he is that's what he's staring at. That's what he's looking at. All of those major foreign nationals that book his hotels, all of that money immediately will dry up. We see it now, and that's what the president is looking at. That's what the president is fighting to stay away from.
Okay, because there's really something. There's the other thing we talked about last night that I want to get into here. So let's move forward quickly here. So once again, we've got Republicans that are not willing to support him because they're afraid that they may have problems to go to support him, which of course might jeopardize their possibilities of getting reelected again. I think at the end, before January 20th, they will come around and say, look, it's time to go. I think that will be the case. Putting that aside, we've got a situation here where we've got 70 million people that perhaps sincerely believe, and wrongly so despite the evidence, depending on what station that they're listening to, perhaps Fox News and One American News or Newsmax, that there's some legitimacy to this. What do we do, and how do we repair and bring these people around to say, hey, look, okay, he did lose fair and square. How do we change that? How do we bring this country together?
There's a story out today in the Wall Street Journal. It talks about this area in South Texas made up of largely Hispanic Americans who overwhelmingly went for President Donald Trump. Where Hillary Clinton won it in 2016 by 60 points, Joe Biden barely held on and won it by 5. You have people who are concerned about the economy. You have people who are concerned about the pandemic. And there are some people, believe it or not, who just may not know who Joe Biden is. And so clearly, one of the first things that the president-elect has to do, one way I think you bring the country together, you bring the country together by governing. You bring the country together by tackling problems that impact them. You bring the country together by addressing bread and butter issues. And that is going to have to be front and center for this president-elect. We see it with the coronavirus advisory board that he's already put together. If you tackle the coronavirus, you tackle the economy. And
right.
and I think that's the way you deal with it. In addition to that, I think what we will see from this president is an olive branch, is an opportunity to reach out to the other side to find solutions to problems. The question, of course, will be if and will Mitch McConnell work with the incoming president. We got to go back to, again, Barack Obama. When Barack Obama was first elected, the world celebrated. The world lauded the fact that the United States, the elected this African American man for the first time in its history. The world was energized. The world was excited. But then you had Mitch McConnell, who said, notably, infamously, my goal is to make him a one-term president. There was no olive branch.
Right.
There was no reaching across the aisle. If we see that again, we will continue to see gridlock and the country suffers.
I'm a man of the cloth as well as you are. I'm a man of faith. And it's funny, you think about a 77-year-old white man running against another 70-plus-year-old white man, these two old guys, up there. But I really do think, and I'm not saying that, Joe Biden is the answer to everything. He's not. But the fact that he has all this experience in foreign affairs, foreign relations, that he has a reputation of reaching out across the lines to Republicans, that he has a whole wealth of people behind him that have ran in successful governments, the Obama administration, that he's probably going to put together a diverse cabinet, not just of Democrats, but also Republicans as well. He just may be the man to pull off something that is probably perhaps a task more formidable than when Obama came in with the banking and Wall Street crisis. He just may be the one, Eric. God makes no mistakes. And I think that Biden, with all his flaws and stuff like that, I think he's a guy. But look, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just very quickly, I think Biden has listened. I think Biden has heard the voters. And I think that will make him a better president as a result of that.
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about, not today, but about the African-American vote. I've talked about this before. He owes us. And he said that in his speech. I heard that. I said, all right, he owes African-Americans a seat at the table, and something has to be done. Because I tell you, if the Democrats don't do anything for African-Americans this time around, after pushing them over and time again, there's going to be hell to pay. Here's what I want to close with you on. We can't spend a whole lot of time with this, but we talked about this also. Van Jones. Van Jones, as you know, is a commentator for CNN. Liberal. He's the guys you could say that's on our side or whatever. But he comes out with, well, okay, all right. That's the thing. That's what I'm getting to. So I get this thing, I see this video that was sent to me from somebody formerly in Congress that Van Jones put out. It must have been yesterday or whatever, sometimes recently. And it says this, okay? In the midst of all the stuff that we're going through, I'm going to read, not all of it, but read this. He says, okay, as an attorney, as a political commentator, and frankly, as a former White House official, I'm reading the transcript now. I used to think I knew a lot about how America picks a president. I was wrong. I did not know. He says, and this year I've been doing some research into some of these fine print and different things in our Constitution that we never talk about. And he says, I've discovered some legal loopholes that shocked me, and I guarantee will shock you. Now he says this, for instance, did you know that under our Constitution, a presidential candidate could actually lose the popular vote, fail to get a majority in the Electoral College, refuse to concede, manipulate hidden mechanisms in our government, and still get sworn in as President of the United States of America? He says that's a true fact, okay? So he says, so if you think that the American people's choice in the U.S. presidential election should actually be sworn in to become president of the United States, please pay attention to this talk, all right? He says, all right. Now, he says this, the main safeguards of the U.S. democracy is not the Constitution at all. It's not in the law at all. It's actually just a little tradition. It's a little custom. And yet this one voluntary gesture is one of the main reasons that you almost never have riots and bloodshed and strife after a U.S. election. What I'm talking about is the concession speech. So what Van Jones is saying, the concession speech is the main safeguard, or one of the main safeguards in our U.S. election, not the Constitution. Now, Eric, I've never heard anything like this. And I'm wondering, is this true? Where does he get this from? And
It is not
coming out at this time.
It is absolutely not part of the U.S. law or the Constitution. It's actually a time-honored tradition,
Right.
is what it is, where the loser of the presidential race will concede, offer their congratulations and their support to work with the incoming president. But it is not enshrined into law. It is not in the Constitution, and it does not, in fact, begin the process of the transition of power. That is actually enshrined in the Constitution, and that transition of power will take place regardless of the president conceding or not. It's all out of the hands of the president. And I'll tell you the story I told you about Jimmy Carter. After Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president, Jimmy Carter asked his military advisor to see some information about the ongoing hostage situation. And that military advisor told him that he could not provide him with that information because he was no longer the president of the United States. And so even though the person in the office may feel as though they are still connected, or they still want some level of operational connection to the office, it is the position itself, it is the laws that govern the position, and the people who carry out those laws who will make it clear, sir, you are no longer the president of the United States. We saw that with Jimmy Carter, and it was clear. And that's when Jimmy Carter realized, I am no longer the president of the United States.
But he was sworn in at that time, though. I mean,
well, Ronald Reagan was sworn in at that time, but
right.
But that's when he realized. So what I'm saying to you is, even after Ronald Reagan was sworn in, it took for this military advisor to reject Jimmy Carter's request that Jimmy Carter himself recognized and realized, I am no longer the commander in chief.
Right. And what I'm saying is that's a great point. But prior to Reagan getting sworn in, the point I'm trying to make here is, Eric, is that a concession speech does not hold up our democratic process. Trump does not have to make a concession speech at all in order for him to be thrown out, because January 20th, if he thinks he can stay in there, well, what did the President-elect Joe Biden say? He says, we've got some folks that can kick out, vagrants or whatever the word was. He cannot. And see, the danger of Van Jones coming out with this, there's obviously an agenda here. I don't know what it is, but he puts this thing out here like this. I read his words. I wasn't paraphrasing on it.
Right.
And I'm saying this is absolutely ridiculous. And what's the game here? What's his game? What's his game?
Right.
Listen, I know you got to go. I assume that they'll be jockeying on this. There'll be more lawsuits, and I guess Trump will probably play this thing out as long as he can. But in the end, we win. I go to that old scripture in the Bible in 2 Kings, where the prophet Elisha says, "Open his eyes." He's talking about his prophet, that he may see that there are more of us than there are of them. And that's the case here. And that reality will be revealed. And I hope that you are right with your projections and your analysis, and you're usually spot on, that Biden will deal with a governing hand, and governing will stem the tide and change people's minds about what is true and what is not. So I know that you have to go on and speak. Everybody wants you all over the world. You're famous. You go overseas. You're signing autographs and stuff and everything. I can't get next to you if you're going overseas, because ain't nobody know me over there. But everybody knows Eric Hand. So have a good day, and we'll talk later, my brother.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Have a good one.
All right. So here we are in a situation where we're still kind of waiting. We all know what the outcome is going to be. But a lot of us really want to emerge from this nightmare of 4 years of Donald Trump sooner rather than later. 2020 couldn't end fast enough. Nobody wants to wish their lives away. But here's what I want to see. despite whatever you want to be, I want to see culture and the arts come back to this country. I want to see Kennedy Center Presents and a president up there lauding and applauding our artists. I want to see a dog in the White House. I want to see a first lady that's truly involved in this country. Michelle Obama in the military, and Joe Biden says that she wants to do that again. I want to see laughter on the White House. I want to see life come back. Remember that movie, it was Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom, and they had that Indian village that was impoverished. You know, there were no trees growing, there was no greenery and stuff because the villains had stolen the secret gems from their property. And Indiana Jones comes back, and at the end, he restores the stones in its proper place in the shrine of the village, and all of a sudden, the grass was green, the skies were blue, the children had been released, they were free. You know, you had lush gardens, life had been brought back to this country. I want to see life brought back to this country, and it does not mean that we don't have an uphill road to fight, ladies and gentlemen. My friends, my beloved, we still have racism in this country. That has not been addressed. We still have the pandemic. We have a number of things that we have to deal with. America is not a perfect place, but I do believe that at least now, with the Biden-Harris leadership, that we are at least back on the right track to move. Let's see what happens the rest of this week. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about next week as well. Thank you for joining me on this, the latest edition of On Point. Be blessed.